Hi, welcome back to Enjoying the Word. We're thinking about studying the Bible, and specifically we're in the second phase of the process. We're coming to the end of it now, this learn phase where we're trying to make sense of what the text means. We want to understand what the author was trying to communicate. Now remember, there's a whole process of looking to see what's there first, the observation stage, where you say, okay, what does the text say? You notice every detail possible to make sure that you're aware of what's on the page in front of you. But then we come to study the meaning of it, do some digging. And the digging takes place with these elements, not necessarily in this order. We're going to jump in and out of context and content. We're going to go big picture. We're going to go into the text itself. So context, the written context, the historic context, the content, what's there on the page in front of you, the details of it, the flow of thought and structure of it, that's important. And a lot of people would say that is the entire process of exegesis, of bringing out the meaning of a passage. But I think now we've got to add this one overtly. This is implicit when people say context and content is the whole deal, but I want to make it explicit. We've got to look consciously at what is the intent of the author. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, there's a couple of things we want to do. We want to notice the passage itself and details within it. We also want to be aware of its context. And as we are looking, we're basically looking for two things. Either explicit reference to what he wants to achieve by what he's writing, or the tone. Okay, we need to be sensitive to the tone of the writing as well as the content of it. So as we think about the intent then, let's jump to the end of the letter. 1 Peter is an epistle. It has a letter frame, as we call it, so the beginning and the end. We've seen the beginning before. Let's just look at the end because it will matter. It will help us. He says, "By Silvanus, a faithful brother as I regard him, I have written briefly to you, exhorting and declaring that this is the true grace of God. Stand firm in it. She who is at Babylon, who is likewise chosen, sends you greetings, and so does Mark, my son. Greet one another with the kiss of love. Peace to all of you who are in Christ." It seems very warm. Letter endings tend to be. But it's interesting to note a couple of details. I suppose this could be confusing. What's Babylon? Probably what they referred to Rome as. So I wouldn't say it's a code word for Rome necessarily, but just that may be the language they used. He may be talking about Rome rather than Babylon. I think it makes a bit more sense. But look at this bit before that. Exhorting and declaring. That's a clarification of what he's been doing. Exhorting and declaring that this is the true grace of God. Stand firm in it. So it's not a gentle suggestion, it's a strong urging, but it's an urging with love and concern for them. Does that summarize what we're seeing in the letter? Does that give us a kind of a reinforcement of probably the tone we've already noticed as we've moved through it? I think it does. These people are suffering, they're facing difficult circumstances. And so what's Peter trying to do? Is he rebuking them for their sin and their compromise of the gospel? Not at all. Is he offering a gentle suggestion and passing the time of day and, sharing the odd quip and anecdote from his own life? No, it's not that either. He's writing a very specific letter to a specific group of people to really encourage them, to exhort them, to stand firm in the grace of God. Okay, so is that what we're seeing in the passage? Content and tone? I would say yes, it is. Content-wise, he's urging them to put away their old life, to long for the new life. He's making this whole connection here between them and Christ. I think this verse 4 is so significant. Jesus was rejected by men, but in the sight of God, chosen and precious. And he flows straight on to talk about them. You too, same thing, right? You're part of God's great project, the temple project, to connect humanity with God. And so his presentation here of their connection to Jesus in this section, it just seems to be very warm, very encouraging. Urgent, yeah, it's important. It's not flippant. It's significant. But there's a real strength to it in terms of the encouragement, the exhortation, that he's giving to them. He wants them to be clear that he's talking about them, but he's not talking about the others, those who do not believe. This is the summary for them. But then before he finishes, he comes back to you again, and he gives this blitz here of Old Testament truths, if you like, to really tie them into the identity of God's people, the reality of God, of who God's made them to be. And so what's his intent in this section specifically? He's kind of concluding the previous one, but then before he moves on, before he goes on to deal with the practical challenges they're facing, he wants to underline and reinforce, this is who you are. This is your connection to Jesus. This is what God's making of you. You've got purpose. You've got meaning. You've got this incredible mission from God that is being just reinforced without rebuke, just a whole lot of encouragement, kind of heart-lifting stuff. And once he's done that, then he can move on in the subsequent section to get into the challenges, the practical issues that they're facing, the difficulties in more specifics. So it seems like this piece of the puzzle here, chapter 2, verses 1 to 10, is concluding the introduction, but it's concluding it with a really strong underlining of the significance of their identity and connection to Jesus. Okay, so we've come to the end of our learn process. We've thought about context, both aspects of it. We've thought about content, details and flow. We've thought about intent. Having wrestled through all of that, done the work to understand what the letter, in this case, what the text means, now we can move on to the final phase, which we're going to do in one summary video in this little mini series. See you next time.